days of yesterday, the thoughts your mind portrays, your deepest inmost side, the feelings you can't hide. Today we stand alone, into the night we go, to find your inmost side, the feelings you can't hide. Now yesterday is gone, still the dream drags on, sleeping from day to day.
What is up, mi gente? TR here, your host of Real Skate Stories. Today, we've got a special topic I know you're gonna love. Your first deck, and your first setup, and your timeline of decks throughout the years. This is such a wonderful part of the brain to climb into because it takes you back to that time when it was so fresh and new and you had no idea, but this was forming your personality and your destiny for your entire life. I'm almost 60 years old. I love skateboarding more than I ever did. And man, little did I know that that first deck was the beginning of what would be a lifetime of stoke. And I love hearing about your guys' first deck and how that made you feel, and let's break it down. So I started skateboarding 1973. I was 8 years old, and my first deck was a little wooden thing with clay wheels, and just tic-tacked around a little bit. You know, it was just kind of a wooden toy, as the great Grasso said. Then my next deck was a Bane. It had some Chicago trucks, some Cadillac wheels with the loose ball bearings. I was really fortunate. I grew up right on the beach. And so there were surfers around, they all rode skateboards. Shout out to J.R. Mosier, Mike Cummings. Started kind of getting the hang of it, but it wasn't until 1976 that I got what I consider my first deck and setup, all brand new. My dad hooked me up. We went over to Gremic Skate Shop in Los Gatos, drove over from Santa Cruz. I got a Fiberflex Doug Salandino with Bennett trucks and Road Rider 2s. This was just about the time I started seeing skateboard magazines. And they had these ads in the back for Val Surf and Kanoa Surf, where they'd have these completes with the light coming from behind the wheels and these brand new setups, and you just sit there and just dream of these setups, these skateboards. And man, I was so stoked because when I first started reading the mags, it was Jay Adams, Tony Alva, all these guys I looked up to, but when I saw Doug Saladino, that was the guy for me. And so I wanted his model. I don't know if it was his model or the Fiberflex Bull Rider maybe, but that was the deck I wanted. And so that was the deck that I got, and that, it just sparked a whole motivation in my mind that never went away to this day. Wow, just so magic. And man, I'm really looking forward to hearing about your guys' first setup, so be sure and get that in the comments. So I got my Fiberflex and started getting my groove on, and I'd go to Frederick Street Park, and there were some pretty good dudes there, man. 1978, boards were already starting to get a little bit wider. I started building my own boards. They were flat. I'd like glue a wedge tail on there. I somehow hooked up a pair of the first Gullwing trucks. I kind of wanted something wider than the Bennetts and some Kryptonics. Kryptonics were the shit. Steve Alba, Mickey Alba, Skateboarder Magazine, Jim Goodrich photos, Jim Cassimus photos, Warren Bolster. I was also getting my photos going. I was a little junior photographer, so I was shooting, I was skating, and Skateboarder Magazine was like the Bible for me. That was right around the time Skate Park Soquel was built. I actually helped build the park. Me and my buddies met Ed DeRosa. He built Skate Park SoCal. They called us the Rats because we were the little guys. It was Chris Heinen and Geth Noble, Steve Farrow, Tom and Todd Carter, and a bunch of other dudes. But then there was the older guys who were established, who were ripping. Kevin Reed, Gary Herbst, Tony Carter, Dion Rip, Sean the Goat O'Callahan, Tim Piomarda, George Milburn. I could just go on all day. There were so many guys. They really influenced us, and they were doing kind of basic tricks on the big walls, and we were doing what we saw in the magazines on the little walls. Like I remember when the invert came out, Bobby Valdez, they called it the straight arm aerial before they called it a hand plan or an invert. And the first time we saw it, we learned it immediately. Shortly thereafter, the Big Ten contest circuit started up, and we started going over the hill and to Winchester, Campbell, Milpitas, all the other parks. And we got to skate with Steve Caballero, Scott Foss, all the dudes from NorCal that were our age and older also. And Jim Gordon was the guy, he built skimboards and skateboards, and he hooked all of us up. I had mid-tracks with the Cryptos, and then the Park Riders came out after the Road Riders. And man, this is just like opening up such a rad part of my brain. I love this. Man, we would skate Park SoCal every day. We'd sleep in the bowls at night sometimes. We traveled all around California and skating the contests. And after Jay Gordon, I got hooked up by Astral skateboards and Astro wheels. I'll never forget this day that Rick Blackheart showed up to the park with the first experimental pairs of independent trucks. That changed the game forever. The second that I felt the indies, man, there was no turning back, and I still ride them to this very day. I'll never ride anything else. Nothing turns like independent trucks. We had a couple of really amazing years skating Skate Park SoCal, traveling around, getting really good at skateboarding. And then the park closed. All the parks closed in California. There was weird insurance things were going on. People were figuring out how to sue the owners of the properties and the owners of the parks.
Skateboard Heaven in Spring Valley was open for 2 years before insurance problems made it impossible for the owners to continue running the park.
We finally got to a point where rather than work for the insurance companies, we elected just to plow the whole thing under and call it a bad dream. You know, there comes a time when instead of fighting it, you just say enough is enough and you walk away from it. That's really what it's come down to.
And they closed Skate Park SoCal. We sessioned it for a while it was still closed. Around that time I got an IPS Inoue pool service, Tom Inoue board, and that thing was amazing. And then they jackhammered the skate park, but they left the beginner bowl. So we were sessioning that for a while. We started making backyard ramps. And one day we were down there skating the beginner bowl, and man, by this time my skate was destroyed. We obviously didn't have any more sponsors. The skate industry was dead. And I had this deck had no nose, no tail, and Keith Meek showed up. The first time I really met Meekster, I remember he showed up at Skate Park SoCal, I think in 1977, and he did a line we never saw before. He dropped straight into the half pipe into the tail block. And that was just revolutionary because we always worked our way up and then started doing our tricks, but he walked straight in, and that thing was huge and rough. We called it the gravel pit. I never got to really meet him. I think I might have talked to him, but years later he ended up moving to Santa Cruz. And he came to the beginner bowl, and we instantly hit it off. And he was tripping on our skateboards. They were so beat down, and he said, hey, if you want to come up to my house, I'll give you a setup. I was like, heck yeah. So we cruised up to his pad. He lived up on Fairway and Monterey Bay Heights, and we cruised up there, and he had this barrel like full of decks, and he dumped it out on his garage floor, and it was like 30 or 40 decks. They all spread out on the ground, and he said, pick any one you want. Unbelievable. And he gave me a pair of wheels, brand new, like Sim Snakes Conicals. Had my Indies, so I had this new setup, and that was also the first time I ever heard punk rock. He goes, are you into punk? What's punk? And he goes, punk rock. What's punk rock? Dude, come here, check it out. So he had this little turntable, and he had some 45s, and he put on Dead Kennedy's Man with the Dogs. And I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. The second I heard that, when Meekster played the DKs for me, it just changed my life. That kind of became kind of the theme of our music, of our lives. And just like all you guys too, I know. So also drop down in the comments who your first punk rock band was, what you listened to, because that was just, wow, game changing. So after that, we'd skate together all the time, and he ended up pretty much sponsoring me for the next like 10 years. The first deck that I picked out from that barrel was a Santa Cruz Stinger. I think I got some of those roller balls. Remember those? The round yo-yo roller balls? Did you guys ever try those? After I wore out the Sim Snakes, and man, we just skated all the time. And then he had the Slasher come out. He always hooked me up on Slashers.
Place in Santa Cruz where guys like Tony Roberts go really, really fast.
Doesn't matter what the odds may be, there are no rules in reality. Now the odds are 1 to 3. There's no place Johnny'd rather be. Johnny never run away. All his friends would say, he's not afraid of his dying day. Fighting is the American way. Johnny's dying in an ambush. This time they caught him all alone. None of his gang is there to help him.
So right around that time, the Slasher board came out. Rob Rosscott moved to town. They got really into the whole surf skate movement, and both of them had such good style skateboarding that it was kind of natural, I think, for them to get into surfing, and it influenced their skateboarding at the time also.
Johnny's dying in an ambush. This time they caught him all alone. None of his gang is there to help him. Johnny doesn't stand a chance in hell. It doesn't matter what the odds may be, there are no rules in reality. Now the odds are 1 to 3. There's no place Johnny'd rather be. Johnny never run away.
Was really one of the best guys in the world at that point in time. He ripped any type of terrain. His style was amazing. He was a big guy, but super nimble. And he could do like almost any trick of the day, and if a new trick came out, he could learn it just like that. Rosscott started giving me boards too, and he'd give me clothes, shoes. He hooked me up with Airwalk. Then I ended up getting a place with Rob and Joel Gomez, who owned Sessions Skate Shop. And Joel was another guy who I skated with my whole life, who always hooked me up with decks, wheels. He would drive us over to Winchester from Santa Cruz. I would ride the Salbas, always had the Salbas. The Jason Jesse. The Slasher, of course. All the different Roscops with the hands coming through the target. I would get hooked up on the SMAs. I loved the Jesse Martinez. And I picked a Colby Carter 8th Street. I left the States forever and never went back. And I've been in Latin America and the Caribbean ever since. It's been, 3 decades or more. Once I got to Costa Rica was the first place that I moved to. I lived out in the jungle in the middle of nowhere, and I built my own cement half pipe. Skateboarding timeline, it's just so magical. So as the years went by, my buddy Caleb Stevens moved to Playa Negra, and he built El Mutante skate park. And by that time, I'd have people coming down to visit me. They would always bring me setups from NHS. Shout out Mikey Marquez, who brought me, always he knew that I wanted the Tom Knox and the Eric Dressen. Shout out Paul Merrill, brought me a Tom Remillard complete. After that, my buddy Alex builds this killer pool in his backyard. And I get to session it with him, Salba, and pineapple saladino. So the first deck I wanted, the Doug Pineapple Saladino, this story comes all the way full circle, and I get to session with him in Costa Rica. And that's today's episode. So cannot wait to hear about your guys' first deck, first time you heard punk rock, your timeline of decks, the ones that really, really bring up those emotions, and drop it all in the comments. Can't wait to engage with you guys, and I'll see you on the next Real Skate Stories.